Hi everyone, it's Gary here, and a warm welcome back to the fourth official. Joining me on this show, once again, a very special guest from the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. It's Glen Schroeder. Warm welcome back to the fourth official, Graham.
Thank you very much for getting me back on, guys.
No problem at all. We've had you on a couple of times now on the network. First of all was when Neil Warnock had just taken charge.
Yeah.
And I think probably from an Aberdeen perspective, the least said about that time, the better. We then had you on just a couple of months ago as the Jimmy Thielen era was just kind of in its interim stages and just starting to kind of kick into gear. And I think it's fair to say, in the build up to the big game on Wednesday night, I don't think anyone, I think, from either an Rangers or an Aberdeen persuasion could have foreseen that going into the game on Wednesday, an Aberdeen victory could see them now quite a 9 point gap between them and Rangers before they even get to bonfire night. It's been some turnaround in terms of Aberdeen's fortunes this season, and I think probably for the first time in a long time, Aberdeen go into a home game against one part of the Old Firm very much smelling quite a lot of blood, and the confidence, I believe, is very, very high.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, other than the bookies who have very much got Rangers favourites for this game, confidence is flowing. We've just joined this episode after doing my own podcast where we kind of spoke about the kind of strange feeling we've had this season going into games both against Celtic and Rangers, feeling optimistic, feeling confident that we can get a result that's kind of a bit unheard of amongst, maybe the more optimistic or pessimistic, I should say, Aberdeen fan. But such is the belief that Jimmy Tilleen's installed in not only the players but the fans as well. And interesting, you say there's an opportunity to go that much clear of Rangers before bonfire night. I just heard the word fire and thought that could be what Philip Clement gets if things don't go right on Wednesday night.
Well, there's certainly a few people from a Rangers persuasion that might actually not be that disappointed in terms of if that's the end result of what happens on Wednesday night. I don't think anyone really goes out their way to want to see Rangers ever lose a game, but I think if that's going to be the end goal from it, people that want that to happen may well see it as a bit of collateral damage as the 3 points. But I think from my perspective, I don't see, I think no matter what the result on Wednesday night, I don't see a change happening at this stage with regards to Clement's position, unless it's to be a really damaging, proper scudding, where I think that would be really, really difficult to come back from. But apart from really the Leon game and Parkhead, we've not really been on the tail end of a really bad result in Clement's era, as much as there's been lots of fairly poor performances, and the one at the weekend against St Mirren certainly wasn't great from anyone's perspective. And momentum, I think, is a really, really kind of strong word, and it's something that Aberdeen are very much kind of riding the crest of the wave at the moment. And that comes from winning games and even grinding out results when not necessarily playing all that well, but winning is a great habit to get into. And I think long may it continue, I think, from your perspective, going into a big game on Wednesday night. And as I say, it's been a while, I think, since you've been in that area where you think that, yeah, do you know what? Like, you're always going to fancy your team, right? But actual proper confidence in what you're coming up against. And I think that's something that I think Thielen and his staff must be credited in. One thing I wanted to speak to you about was Philippe Clement's comments after the St Mirren game on Sunday, where he mentioned this word we've heard so much this season in terms of it being a project and new players in the building that are still trying to get used to Scottish football. And he stated earlier on in the season that come October, November is when you'll really start to see the real Rangers. We're still probably yet to really see that, apart from a couple of probably standout performances against Steaua Bucharest and Ross County, which is not exactly the highest calibre of opposition to come up against. But Aberdeen have also had a massive turnaround, I think, in terms of the summer, new players coming in, obviously losing Majovski, where we spoke about that a couple of months ago. Actually, the new players that have came in have hit the ground running really quickly. But I think one thing that I've noticed from a distance is that with proper coaching and a proper structure and a plan, he's actually been able to improve people that were already in the building. And I think that's probably one of the biggest criticisms I think that can get labelled against Philippe Clement, is that there probably isn't that evidence of him having made players better in the kind of 12 months that he's been in the role. Granted, it will take some players time to get used to what Scottish football is all about, but people that have already been there, I'm not really seeing too many people saying that he's gone and made a John Souttar a better player, for example, or people that were already there. But Thielen's certainly getting a trick out of players that maybe other Aberdeen managers didn't quite get in the past.
Yeah, and I think, we spoke about Clement's kind of post-match comments about, players and pressures ahead of the game on Wednesday night. And I think you're absolutely spot on in the sense that Jimmy Tillene has got that tune out of, players that were, in our minds, on the exit door, Shaden Morris being a key example. As I said on our podcast, Saturday marked 256 days since his horror show against Motherwell, where he was substituted before half time and looked a player absolutely void of any confidence and any sort of belief. And here we are on Saturday past, where he plays 45 minutes against Dundee United and walks away with man of the match, now potentially in line for a start on Wednesday night. Pape Habib Gueye, another example where, again, the probably highlight of last season was he managed a step over in a game. Now he's our top goal scorer, flying with confidence after a loan spell in Norway. And I think it's that tutelage and that belief that Jimmy's installed in these players. There's a real togetherness amongst this squad at present. And winning, as you rightly say, breeds confidence. Momentum is such a huge word as well. But the players have bought into what Jimmy Tillene said. Winning games, the fans have bought into it, and there's that kind of togetherness. I know there'll be Rangers fans that will speak about the pressures of playing for Rangers and the expectations. Maybe not to the same level, but there is a pressure and expectation of playing for Aberdeen as well. We as fans want to be up there challenging at the top end of the table. We want to see our team winning trophies. We've not seen that for a couple of years. So these players, manager alike coming in, have to deal with that immediate pressure to elevate us back up to the top end of the table. We're seeing that quick turnaround at Aberdeen that obviously maybe certain parts haven't worked to affect at Rangers. And I think this is why this game is set up so nicely on Wednesday night, because if we don't win the game, if the game was to end in a draw, that's not necessarily a bad result for Aberdeen. It's probably viewed as a bad result at Ibrox. If we win the game, it's a terrific result, and it's a terrible result for the blue half of Glasgow. There's more pressure on this game for Rangers than there is on Aberdeen, despite, as I've said, the confidence that might be around this Aberdeen team and the fan base going into the game.
Yeah, that's why we've obviously named this show Pressure Pit, because there is a massive pressure of going up to Pittodrie at the best of times, and it's an atmosphere that many a Rangers side that's got probably a lot more quality than the current Rangers team has struggled in at times to handle that kind of powder keg atmosphere and cup tie like atmosphere that I think will be around the game as much as it's a league game at Pittodrie under the lights. Especially when the teams are flying, it's going to be a proper game where there's going to be tackles flying in all over the place, and I think it's going to feel like there's high stakes. And I think for a game in October, that's quite unheard of, I think, in terms of just how much importance there is on the match.
And I think you're absolutely right, because the pressure might be seen to be on Aberdeen. Can we continue to keep pace with Celtic? Obviously, from a Rangers persuasion, a defeat could see you even drop down to, Dundee United could potentially close that gap back to you on third place as well. So there's a lot riding on this one game, and as you said, at the end of October, it's unheard of. But from any neutrals tuning in, they must surely be enjoying that from a Scottish football persuasion, to have another game have so much riding on it, and this one at least being on telly, and hopefully a good advert for Scottish football as a whole.
Yep. When we spoke last time, Glenn, we spoke a little bit about the next generation of kind of Aberdeen forwards post Bojan Majowski. And we spoke a little bit about Duke's kind of exile and self-imposed exile, and he's a player who's obviously came back into the squad of late, the last kind of 2 or 3 games, really starting to fire a little bit and looks as if he's got a bit hunger about himself again. But to prove, I think that from everyone's persuasion in terms of what he wanted to happen at the summer didn't materialise, and he's kind of had to come back with his tail between his legs a little bit and just get the finger out and start playing some football again. But he's a player who's caused Rangers no harm, no end of harm in the past in terms of his kind of direct running. And I just wonder whether or not Jimmy Tilleen would have watched a bit of the Rangers game on Sunday and saw what the Mirren striker Olasanya did to not just Robin Proper, who I would be amazed if he starts on Wednesday night, given how he played at the weekend, but also Leon Balogun. John Suter comes back in. Talk of potentially Narancho Cajanviro maybe playing as a makeshift centre back. That must be kind of proper picking up the years of the Aberdeen players to go. It's not a steady Rangers backline by any stretch of imagination, and pace and power. We saw Esther Sokoloff score a goal against Rangers last season, again with kind of direct running and being a bit of a nuisance. So everything we've seen from Rangers over the last 18 months, that's the type of strikers that we cannot deal with.
And we spoke about that on our episode as well. Going into this game, Shayden Morris excelled in that 45 minutes of the second half against Dundee United in place of Topi Keskinen, who came off with a slight knock. Topi Keskinen, direct, pacey. Duke, direct, pacey. Shayden Morris, direct, pacey. Esther Sokler, pace, physical, height. All things as you've just described there that Rangers don't like, but we've got 4 different options up front. You've got Vinny Bissauin that's got pace and directness potentially off the bench. That's not even mentioning Leighton Clarkson and Jamie McGrath as well. We were speaking about the abundance of options that this Aberdeen team have got going into a game. And for us, there seems to be, I obviously mentioned confidence, but we're fit, we're healthy, and there's competition for places, and competition only brings the best out of other players as well, because they want to retain the jersey. And I think this is also benefiting Aberdeen just now.
Midfield battle in these games is always key. We've seen that a little bit of subtext in recent years with Ryan Jack coming back up to Aberdeen. I don't imagine Connor Barron's going to be greeted with a great deal of kind of friendliness from the support when he comes back up. It's going to be interesting to see how he obviously handles the atmosphere coming at it from the other side. We spoke last time about him being obviously a standout for Rangers so far this season. It's going to be a very different game, I think. I'd expect him and Nico Rashkan to continue in the middle of the park, because we're going to need that sort of kind of physicalness of the game. How do you anticipate Barron's going to handle the atmosphere?
Well, I mean, it's going to go 2 ways. He's either going to thrive in it or he's going to crumble. And I think a lot will be done on how Aberdeen line up in that midfield. We saw Ante Palaversa start the game at the weekend against Dundee United. I don't think he'll start on Wednesday. Graham Shinney, I'm sure, will come back into that midfield. And I'm sure between him and Nielsen will let Connor Barron know he's back in Aberdeen. And if one of them two don't, I'm sure Slobodan Rubezic most certainly will. You're right, he's not going to get a warm or friendly reception. There will be a lot of, anger towards Connor Barron, and it's whether or not he picks that up. The only thing I kind of wondered was if anything could have been made of that challenge he had against St Mirren, but I don't think we'll see that between now and Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd be amazed if anything happens off the back of that. But yeah, he should absolutely be lining up, and I think Rangers need that if they go in with someone like Mo Diamande in the centre of midfield. Graham Shinney will be licking his lips for that, because he's a player who likes that physical battle. Woody Mandy doesn't particularly, so I would expect if he does play, it will be one up in that sort of kind of number 10 area, expecting Tom Lawrence probably still to be unavailable. Who else we go? Vaslav Cherny's not terribly renowned for sticking his boot in. Same with another end with Nadeem Bayrami. So it's going to be interesting to see how Rangers do that. I'd obviously expect James Tavernier that he'll likely come back in. I think given just how poor the defence played against St Mirren, I'd be amazed if he continues to be out the side. And maybe just a little bit of a wild card potentially do on Sterling, and maybe another one that comes in if the manager decides to navigate away from his tried and tested 2-4-3-1 formation and maybe try and pack the midfield a little bit. Sterling maybe will again provide a bit of dig and a bit of height and a bit of physicalness in that midfield, because it's not something we've got a huge amount of, so that may well happen. Expect Cyril Dessers obviously to start as well. Hamza Yaman, very much a work in progress and very raw at this stage. Dessers, for all his detractors, is a player who's got a great deal of experience and certainly made the difference at the weekend when he came on. So I'd expect he'll play and try and deal with the kind of big defenders that Aberdeen have got and try and get in about them. So I think that'll be what the lineup will be. Interested to kind of get your take in terms of, from a defensive point of view, how Aberdeen, are they likely to kind of go kind of 4-3-3?
Yeah, I don't think we'll make any changes to that back line. Mitov obviously has been hugely impressive, and then we'll go Jack McKenzie, Gavin Malloy, Rubezic, and Nicky Devlin at right back, or right wing back as he's more accustomed to. My concern obviously would be with Dessers coming into the Rangers lineup is that Rangers might look to exploit Gavin Malloy. He's potentially been the weak link of the two. I think Rubezic, if Dessers goes on Rubezic will love that battle. Malloy, maybe not so much, and he's had his nervous moments. The one encouraging thing is that if he has made a mistake, he's then grown into the game and he doesn't let it affect him. For me, that then will go into a midfield of Nielsen and Shinnie. McGrath will join that midfield. I think he'll operate in the 10 role. And then the front three for me is the really interesting one. For me personally, I want to see Topi Keskinen start. We were just discussing it on the podcast. Could potentially Shaden Morris then start on the right-hand side based on his performance. Keep Esther Sokler up top, and then we've got Duke as an option later on in the game to be an impact sub, because what's been really refreshing about Aberdeen just now is we're not afraid to make the changes, and the changes that we are making continue to be positive, pacey and direct to suit that style that Tuline's implemented.
Seen a little bit of nonsense over social media about the appointment of John Beaton as the referee for the game on Wednesday night. See, as a Rangers fan, I'm baffled by this kind of John Beaton as a Rangers fan stuff, because he's just a terrible referee. And I've been watching Rangers since 1992, and I've seen very little evidence of John Beaton being in favour of Rangers, as much as some of the stats may well reflect that. But he's, I don't get it, but I can see it from other fans' perspective, as they always look for an issue before it happens. But it's another one. This is a game in the past that has incident and it has red cards, and I just wonder whether or not Beaton is the right appointment in terms of being able to control the game, because history's shown that he's not terribly good at that.
Yeah, and I think, we joked about putting tinfoil hats on when you saw the referee appointment, Don Robertson, on VAR as well. But I think,
which is worse, by the way, from a Rangers perspective, because Don Robertson is certainly no friend of Rangers. So
I think in general, when you look at, and I'm sure Rangers fans look at the exact same when it comes to the Old Firm derby, is you want a strong referee in these games. You don't want the game to be ruined by a penalty to Rangers or a red card or, a controversial decision. And John Beaton is a referee that normally there's a decision or two, whether it's for Rangers or against Rangers. And every club's going to have that. I'm sure, Grant Irvin's one from an Aberdeen point of view that seems very incompetent. And look, it's always going to be an appointment that's going to attract interest. That it's what the SFA are trying to do to help Rangers. Unfortunately, you can't stop people spouting nonsense on the internet. But I'm sure, I think it was the game at Ibrox before Michael Beale got sacked that John Beaton was the referee. I could be wrong, but John Beaton's refereed games from Aberdeen against Rangers where we haven't lost. We've got points or we've won the game. So, I'm not going to go into that one too much. As I said, I just hope that there's nothing overly controversial that ruins the game and takes away as a main talking point.
Yeah, I think after the game as well, obviously a big weekend coming up in terms of League Cup semi-finals. Rangers on the Sunday coming up against Motherwell, but on the Saturday, obviously Aberdeen coming up against Celtic, and you obviously gave them a right good fright in the league game earlier on this month. Hampden against Celtic, not necessarily Aberdeen's greatest strong suit, but I think obviously depending on the result on Wednesday night, you either go into that with even more momentum and more of a great feeling about it, or you go into it going, well, it's a perfect game to try and get back some of that momentum if the result doesn't go your way on Wednesday.
Yeah, look, I think cup games kind of take care of themselves. We're unbeaten in our last 3 games against Celtic, which is obviously better than Rangers. Sorry, I had to get that in.
Listen, we've got a few sticks you can beat us with just now, Glen. So,
but at the end of the day, we gave a good account of ourselves against Celtic last time out against Hampden, but came up short. Aberdeen against Celtic in general is not exactly a great record. I think that's 25 games now where we failed to be on the right side of the result. I think you're right. Result dependent defines the mood that we go into this game, but Saturday poses the best opportunity for us at this present moment to win silverware. As much as people want to speak about a title challenge or pushing Celtic, Saturday is the first real opportunity at being on that next step for silverware. So I think even if we were to lose on Wednesday night, Jimmy Tolino will get the players regrouped, the fans will get re-galvanised, and we go again and hopefully get that positive result on Saturday as well.
Yep. No matter what happens, I think on Wednesday, I think it's going to be a proper spectacle. I don't think at this stage I know what Rangers is going to turn up, and we don't know that from game to game at the moment, which makes us really, really unpredictable to try and predict what the game is going to turn out like. But one thing we can certainly say that it's going to be eventful. There's going to be talking points afterwards, and we'll be all over it here on the Fourth Official, as we always are, win, lose or draw, which I'm sure you will be as well, up from that Red Tinted Glasses perspective.
Live episode on Thursday night on our YouTube channel, regardless of the result, and then looking ahead to the weekend's result. So you'll either see us deeply disappointed or overly jubilant.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, a big thank you to Glen for coming on, sharing some local knowledge with regards to this one. Very much looking forward to the game, even if I might be watching it a bit like that. But we'll see how the game goes. But no, a big thank you for your time and coming on.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me on.
Perfect. We'll speak to you next time here on the Fourth Official. As always, thank you for watching. Goodbye.